Good day to you. Welcome back to the Higher Grounds podcast. We thank you for joining us today. And as you can see, we're in a different location. I have had to go to a different location to get Steve to join me because he rarely ever comes to be with us anymore since he's big and important. And, one of these days, Brother Hill, one of these days, me and you will be sitting around talking as old men, older. We're already old. Older men, and we'll be probably in a Baptist nursing home somewhere in our wheelchair. And we'll each have an Ensure. Coffee-flavored Ensure. And I'll say, you remember that little old boy, Stephen Aldridge? And you'll say, I remember him. And I'll say, I still got his number in my phone, but he won't ever answer. No. So I had to come all the way to Florida to get him to come from the same state the two of us live in so we could be together to film a podcast.
Well,
if that allows, and see, for a long time I've said, Steve, I really need your help. I'll help you, Brother Andy. I'll help you. Whatever it is you need, brother, whatever it is you need, I'll help you. And I said, that's great, Steve. I need some morning minute meditations. Well, I can't do that, but I really want to help you. And then he started,
I want to help you in every way except for what you need.
And then he started his own little program.
Well, that's a church. That's a church ministry.
Yeah, church, my hind leg.
Look up in here.
Who was it says that? Anyway, never mind.
Yeah.
So anyhow, hey, we got a guest on the podcast today.
Absolutely.
This is Brother Paul Hill, one of our dear friends, and we go back
a long way.
Yes. Probably close to 25 years.
Yes,
close. I don't know, 20 some odd years we go back. And his dad and my dad became acquainted back in the late 60s, early 70s in Atlanta.
Yes.
And then, of course, Brother Paul and his sibling brothers, all of them went in the ministry.
Yeah.
Me being the only child of my only male child of my dad, I went in the ministry.
Yeah.
And not that we did it because of Daddy.
No.
Matter of fact, I'd really rather have avoided it a time or two.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, but Nimrod Stephen, your dad's a preacher.
Yeah, he is. He's a first generation
Christian.
preacher. Yeah, Christian and preacher.
Yeah.
And he's 78 and he's still pastoring. Man.
78.
Yep, 78 years old. Yeah.
Now, your dad's not pastoring now, Brother Ray, but he does supply work and he preaches around.
Great.
And Ray is how old?
He is 79.
Wow.
Ray Hill is Paul's dad, 79 years old, still preaching.
Yep.
And still got vigor about him. And still does construction work.
Still building
at
houses.
79 years old.
Yes, sir.
My sister sent me a picture the other day of my dad, 76 years old on a roof roofing. Isn't that something?
Wow.
Yeah. And then my wife's dad, Lacey, my sister-in-law called Beverly and she said, Daddy's on the roof roofing. He's 80.
Oh.
And so, hey, we come from stock
Some
where we
good
were.
stock.
Right.
Yeah, there's no
No
soft-handed bunch.
Yeah,
No,
no.
sir, friend.
Yeah, it ain't been long. My daddy, quit climbing it. I mean, he'll still get on one. He'd climb extension ladders, paint, brushes.
Your dad was a painting machine.
Yeah, painting
I'm gonna
machine.
tell you, his dad painted
houses
and stuff. But he is a painter.
Yeah.
I'm talking about an artist. It's unbelievable the stuff your dad's painting.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. He didn't start doing it
just
till.
looked through the window and saw Ray Hill walking across
right by that.
Across the hallway over there. 80 years old, still at it.
Yes, sir.
Is he coming to take us? Do we got to go work, frame a house, or anything in between? Or we got to do it?
It's time for a nap and some jerky.
Yeah,
Okay, just checking. Just checking out. You got to stay on that Jubilee. Yeah.
Jubilee. That's why we're here in Chipley, Florida.
Amen.
It's Panhandle, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So we're in the Panhandle of Florida, in the Central Time Zone, at the Berean Baptist Church, where Brother Paul Hill has been the pastor for the past 7.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Going on 7. Yeah.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Amen.
That is amazing to me. 2000 and whatever it was. 2001, I guess it was, or 2. Paul called and he came over close, not too far from us, and he was pastoring in the Western North Carolina area for a few years.
Yeah.
And we just had such a good time fellowshipping there. And then you moving to Chipley has been, I don't like having you that far away, but it's a joy to come here.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Amen. We're glad to have you every time you come.
What do you like about the area?
Really everything.
Really?
It's home. I mean, you know how it is when the Lord puts a place in your heart. It's just home.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, your brother don't live far.
No,
from
he
here.
lives about 50, 60 miles.
And he pastors in the area
in
too.
Quincy.
I got you.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
That's amazing
Yeah.
that God's took you from Georgia and put you down here.
Yeah.
I give you a little tidbit. One of the former pastors, probably 2 or 3 back, at least 3, was James Rainwater.
Yes.
And Dr. James Rainwater, he's gone home to be with the Lord now.
Yeah.
Been gone since probably 2008 or 9 or
Yes, sir. Back,
whatever.
Yeah, somewhere back through there.
But Dr. Rainwater pastored here for how many years? I mean, a bunch.
yeah, I think 12 or 15 years. Somewhere in that time. frame.
He's a rabbit hunting machine, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He'd run them pack of dogs and hunt rabbits. But Dr. Rainwater, you talking about a staunch man
Yes,
in
sir,
what he
buddy.
believed.
Yes.
And there was no comedic strip in
Not much.
James Rainwater at all. Not in the pulpit anyway.
No.
But he was no entertainer.
No.
But he was preaching revival when I got saved.
Oh, amen.
You didn't know that?
No.
He
I
was
did
preaching
not
revival
know
when
that.
I got saved.
Wow.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't preach that night. That's probably why I got saved.
Amen.
You mentioned a good aspect of ministry, and I know we're getting ready to jump into the heart, and you'll introduce that in a minute, but it really takes the Lord to do that. When you make a move in ministry,
Yeah.
and God may uproot you from what you've always known, background, family, and take you, miles away, hundreds of miles, whatever it may be, and then where He puts you at, it becomes home. It becomes home,
Yes, sir.
to people.
Yeah.
And that's ministry. You don't really hear people say that with jobs, work, things like that. But when it's
Yeah.
ministry and your heart's there, God
Yeah,
makes
you
it
grew up
home.
in Sand Hills
Yeah, oh yeah.
all your life.
Yes,
and
sir.
then you had a little bit of transition up in the Piedmont area of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Stayed for how many years at
3.
Brother Melton's?
Brother was there for 3 years.
3 years, and then came back
Pastor.
and took the church there at Lighthouse where Josh is at now, my son-in-law.
Yeah.
And you were at 12 years?
12, yeah, right, 12 and a half years. Yeah.
And now that you're in the upstate of South Carolina with Brother Finney, is it become like home to you?
Oh, it has. It's amazing how quick. And I just had that conversation with somebody. You move up there, and it's totally different than what I'm.
yeah.
Payson is very rural and just in
Yes.
country.
Yeah.
And there's 2 traffic lights, and now we're around bustling traffic and busy and industry and all those things. But it has. I mean, it's home.
Yeah.
It feels like you've been there longer and you settle in real fast.
And for me, growing up in the mountains of East Tennessee
Yeah.
with Larry Wells as my
Yeah.
pastor, and of course, going into business, traveling in business. Of course,
Yeah.
I've always traveled since I was, just a young man. But winding up going to Columbia, Tennessee for my first pastorate, long way away from home, and then now in South Carolina where I'm at now.
Yeah.
It's the culture is totally different than what I grew up in.
Oh yeah.
But my children consider it home. I mean, if we were to go back to the mountains now, I grew up around Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge. If I go back to the mountains now, it ain't like home to the
No.
kids. I mean, they wouldn't go back there now.
No, I doubt it.
Now, and you've been here 7
7,
years.
going on 7.
And
yes,
your
sir.
background was from where?
Well, we're originally from Georgia.
Right.
And then, pastored some in Georgia and then up into North Carolina and then, South Georgia, of course, and just different places. And then here for the last 7 years.
Well, what we want to talk about today, and I was telling a younger preacher that was at your meeting, we're at Brother Paul's Jubilee meeting here at Berean. I was talking to this young preacher about the subject matter of what I asked Brother Paul to help me with today, and that is this. We want to encourage younger preachers, younger pastors in regard to ministry. If you're not very careful, and sometimes God's going to put you in, through His sovereignty, He's going to put you in situations to mold you and to shape you that are not going to be pleasant.
Right.
And through all of that, what's going to happen is you're going to come to a make or break time in your ministry, which I really don't think you've had to go through. I had to go through some of that to some degree in my first pastorate. You've had to do that a time or two to get you to where I think is the best place you've ever been.
Bless your heart.
And I think you would concur.
We feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I this is a great place,
Yeah.
and with a great history and a great track record. But you through the years, you surrendered to preach at what age?
18.
At 18.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you were in Preston Moore's church.
Yes, sir.
And in Dr. Moore's church, you surrendered to preach at 18. How old were you when you first started pastoring?
I think I was about 28, 27, 28.
Okay,
somewhere through
so
there.
10 years or so after you began
Yeah.
to
Yes, sir.
preach.
Yeah.
And so you and Miss Tonna, of course, were married. Did you have any children at the time when you took your first church?
Yes, we had Bethany then, which is our oldest daughter now.
Right.
And then Taylor
I think
came
she's been
on.
your oldest daughter the whole time.
Yeah,
I
yes,
think.
yes, she's been the oldest daughter.
Yeah.
Shout out to, can I give a quick shout out to Bethany here, who had me a big old thing of white chocolate covered Oreo balls when I
And
got here.
I want
just
to
need
know why I didn't have any.
Well, I kept them hidden in my room, but
Well,
I do have them out.
I done got into them.
Okay, well, that's good.
Well, I want to know why I didn't have some. I mean,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I got them. I saw she had made some on Facebook, and I just asked her for some, and she made them. Y'all just didn't ask
Yeah.
her.
you beggar, stinking beggar.
You have not because you have
That's
not.
exactly right.
Let's
I'm
throw a
sorry.
verse of scripture out of context in the middle of all this and make it all better.
Sorry.
Just the way he preaches anyway. I
Yeah,
wouldn't say that.
yeah.
Very fitting word, Brother Paul. Very fitting word.
So here's the question. So in the first pastorate, you pastored 5 churches. I
Yes.
think it's right.
Yes,
All right.
it's number 5.
I don't care how detailed you are or not. It's irrelevant to me. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But all of those were not pleasant experiences.
No. But it probably would be unpleasant for those churches too, as me having been a young man
Yes.
coming into them.
Yeah.
Some of it was boot camp experience for me, where the Lord, had to work on me
Right.
Yeah.
and had to work on my heart a
Yeah.
lot. Then I didn't realize that, but
Wow.
No, you thought you were getting killed.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think every one of us have had situations where we've looked at God and said, what are you doing to
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
What did I do? But what we don't realize, looking back, young men, listen to me now, looking back in a few years, one of the things that you're going to see is God had a plan that he was working out in your life to mold and shape you into the servant he wanted you to be
Yeah.
for the years that you are going to be most productive.
Yeah.
The years you're going to be the most productive will be probably your late 30s through your 40s through your 50s up to 60 or so is your most productive years. And so what God does in you during that time that he's bringing you up to your prime is going to make or break you into what God's going to do with
Yeah.
your. I think. That's my opinion.
I'd say it's pretty
Is that
accurate.
not what happened in your
That's
life?
pretty accurate, preacher.
Yeah.
Alfred Willis said something. I say recently. It's been some time back, and you can weigh in on this. But he wasn't cutting a joke, but at the same time it was humorous. He said it's amazing how many sheep are killed in the making of one shepherd.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what he's talking about was, God's having to, for a young preacher, and particularly one who will not be mentored and will not allow an older man to speak truth into his life and be willing to weigh it out and use that truth, you can hurt some people in a
Very
hurry.
dangerous. Oh, buddy.
Not meaning to. I
Right.
don't think you're a
No,
you're
that's not-
you're an Attila the Hun or anything. But at the same time, if there is no knowledge,
Yeah.
there can be great damage that is caused by a pastor.
Yeah.
So in those early years, let's talk. You asked me if it was scripted, and we're not really scripted, but yet at the same time, we do know the direction we're going.
Yeah.
So, what are some regrets from the early years in your ministry? I've got many, but what would be some of yours? Would you think?
One is not letting the grace of God work in people's lives before you tried to deal with a situation with them or around them, or not just haul off and start whacking.
So you're talking about seizing a situation before God got to working in it. Yeah, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Yeah.
Any examples?
No, not right off.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
I did that.
I have seen it work here, where some situations were in the past.
Yeah.
I would have said something about it, said something to it, and would have tried to adjust it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, an older pastor, my dad, I asked him before I came here to pastor. I said, Dad, tell me some things that if you could, you would back up and you would do. What would you tell a young man now? He said, number one, he said, I would let the grace of God work in people's lives before you have to.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that you avoid dealing with what you're dealing with.
No, you preach that Bible, you preach that book, and do what you got to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Allowing the grace of God to.
Well, I've said, and I think you would concur, that sometimes if you'll move slowly, if you'll move slowly on a situation,
yes,
prayerfully and slowly with a lot of counsel from wiser men.
Yes.
One of the things that you'll see sometimes is those situations will work themselves out before you ever have to deal with them.
Yes.
And I believe that Satan brings some things along sometimes to cause you to grab the bull by the horns too fast, be a bull in a china shop, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you can't put it all back together.
Yes,
and there have been a lot of men who've cut their ministry short, not because they're being persecuted, but because sometimes they're ignorant, sometimes they're stupid.
Yeah.
But they've done things they shouldn't have done too early.
Yeah.
Right.
And one thing that I think would help with that, Brother Paul mentioned it, you mentioned it. I think that's kind of a natural reaction. We see it pop its head up, just go right at it. That's the value of a good mentor.
Yeah.
Yes.
A good, you take those senior men that we had in the service that are in this meeting. That's what those kind of men would tell you. They would tell you that. They would instill some things that, no, wait a minute now, just wait a minute. Just keep preaching them, just keep loving them, just keep being true. You stand and give that some time. That there in itself is the value of having a good mentor and letting them mentor
I think a really good thought would be in some of the meetings that we conduct or that that we're in, is to take one service or maybe between services and have the old men sit on stage and just having the junior preachers, for lack of a better word, just field, give them questions, have those old men field some questions and just give some wisdom. I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So, Steve, let me ask you this. What is, and I want to ask you the same question, what was one of the greatest pieces of advice an older preacher gave you back in the day?
Well, you've already covered move slow, and that definitely was. The other one was leave doors open.
Yeah.
Leave
meaning
that when somebody leaves or they've missed some services, the Holy Ghost isn't giving up on them. Right. Jesus isn't giving up on them.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't be responsible for having your church to give up on them.
Yeah.
And that really is something. And we saw people get a family that we had, that they did leave earlier, but people loved them. Yeah. And it wasn't long until not only were they back in, they were one of the strongest families, and they served and they labored. Right. And I thought, man, if I'd have just shut the door and called them from the pulpit and named everything else, we'd have lost them.
And sometimes you have to, depending on the situation.
Yeah. There was a reason Paul mentioned by name the people he did, because they had ran a mark. But I think that's one of those.
Yeah, there have been people that have left our church that, really hurt me. I'm talking about hurt my heart. Mm-hmm. And, to let them know that I love them, in spite, I would take them out for lunch or breakfast or whatever after the fact. And of course, they're kind of, why are you doing this type of deal? And just to say, I wanted to tell you that I appreciate the time that you spent with us, and I am very grateful. And give them a gift and
very admirable. Yeah,
and what you're doing is you're leaving the bridge unburnt.
Right.
And sometimes people get down the road and say, "Man, I just made a mistake."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And if you've burnt the bridge, they'll never be able to correct what was wrong.
Yeah. Another good piece of advice I got was, don't do anything stupid.
Yeah. Who'd you get that from?
Andy Wells.
And Andy Wells got that from Larry Wells.
Yeah. So.
Passing it right along. Yeah. So what's one of the best pieces of advice you ever received?
Well, several.
Okay.
Dad taught us too. Mm-hmm. Don't just pastor a certain group in the church.
Pastor the church.
Pastor the church.
Oh, wow.
Don't just pastor.
That's a good word
the
right
ones
there.
You don't want to pastor.
That's a good word right there.
Some that'll want you to cater to the higher crust, and then they'll want you to come away from the ones that will go with you to death, pastor the church.
Right.
And, he said this too, Dad. And my pastor, Preacher Moore, which Brother Preston Moore, said, you look for the worst in people, you draw that out of them. But if you look for the good in them, the best in them, then you draw that out of them.
Yeah. Wow.
And
have you found that to be true?
Oh,
most of the time.
That's good shepherding word right there.
So, what were you and I have been close friends for years. I know some of the details of some of the difficulties you have faced.
Yeah.
Were there times after some of those difficulties? I know of one particular church that you pastored. I mean, where toward the end of your pastorate, you were really fighting hell by the acre on a regular basis. And I remember you lost 40-something pounds, I think, or something while you were pastoring. And of course, I think you were fasting some and praying some during that time. Yeah. But you were fasting and praying over the church.
Yes.
Okay. Have there been times where you or I know you maybe can't be the mouthpiece for your wife, but you just did not think you could do this anymore?
Yeah.
Did you ever come close to throwing in the towel?
Well, let me carefully say, by the grace of God,
right?
That I didn't.
Right.
The devil will make it all too easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
For you to say, I'm done. But if that man's where God can use him, that man's not done till God takes him home.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not making myself be nothing to nobody.
Right.
But one thing made me stop one time and examine. I mean, really, put the brakes on hard. Was we was going through you were there in the midnight hour.
Yes, sir. I remember.
And my wife came to my office door one night and going through what was going through, and she said, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And well, I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know what to do. Because if you press your home, your family to the place where you destroy it, whether you want to be
then
done or not,
you have no ministry.
Yeah, you're done.
Right.
So as you guys have mentioned, then I turned to aged men and said,
what do I do?
What do I do here? And, we labored on there a couple of more years. The pastor, and I think you guys will concur, he's sort of cut out of that bolt of material where he can take,
right?
The pelts and the words, and he can sort of take it. But when that turns to your family, your wife, when the devil says,
children,
okay, I can't knock him down, I'm going to go after them. And then he'll try to knock them down. Well, if he gets them down and out, and y'all know this too, that the road of the ministry is littered with people who have said, kids who have said, I've seen how they treated my mother and daddy. I'm done. I don't know. I ain't going to church.
We've sat in this very office and discussed, not gossip, but discussed dear friends of ours who have preached for both of us and whose lives are shot, their marriages are shot, their ministries are shot. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of exacerbating circumstances that were not immoral or anything of that nature. It was just the ministry literally killed the family.
Yeah.
And, Satan in the ministry, boys, I'm telling you, Satan's going to have people out there that are shooting at your family.
That's their purpose.
And if you're not carrying on an intimate relationship with God, where God is hedging you in and protecting you and your family, you can be a washout.
Yes.
In a hurry.
Yes.
And I'm glad that he that's begun a good work in us is performing that work till the day of Jesus Christ. And that's not just salvation, really, in the ministry as well.
Yeah.
I was there when you had people that were literally trying to destroy your family. As a dad, how did you keep that in check?
I didn't know what to do to start with. And if it had not been for godly people like you, Miss Beverly, and your children at the time that were not married, I don't think any of them were married then.
No.
And some ladies in your church that were close to our children.
Right.
That we had reached a place in life that, not that I didn't want to help them, but if it had not been for that extracurricular godly influence in our family's lives.
Right. A troop of soldiers around you.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. That's why men do not need to be islands unto themselves.
No.
You'll never make it in the ministry as a lone wolf.
No.
You'll never make it.
No.
You need to surround yourself with a troop of good, godly people, and I mean even ones that you're not pastoring, who will be able to aid you, support you, and bolster you in your ministry and in the faith.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If you were going to take a minute and if you were going to give some of those boys out there that are watching today, and their wives for that matter, if you were going to give them a piece of advice about the ministry that would be telling for the time to come, because they're going to be facing stuff in the next few years that you and I haven't faced. Now, we're going to have to face it with them, but we got a little bit of a foundation.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Number one, your prayer life needs to be everything that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Walk with God.
And we're not talking about let's go ahead and run through the Wednesday night prayer list.
Yeah.
You're talking about
Fellowship with God, communion with God.
right. And you do know there's a lot of preacher boys out there who have no idea what you just said.
Well, shame on them.
Yeah.
Shame on them.
I
Shame
mean,
on
they've
them.
not been taught. You know?
I mean, I think that's where a great portion of a man's heart, his prayer life is born.
Yeah.
Is through adversity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
no.
learns. He learns to go to that secret place and get with God.
That's right.
And they need to learn to have an older man, another good friend, and I wouldn't, not to a peer, not to a contemporary is what I'm talking about, to an older man, somebody's going to know how to help you. If you sit and talk about your church problems with your church family, you're just compounding, making the problem
Yes, sir.
10 million times worse.
Your church family need to know.
Because they're going to deal with
know.
that. They may jump in and deal with that in a way that has.
Or they may question, what are you going to say about me when you disagree with me?
Yeah.
And then you lose their trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So seek out godly counsel.
Right.
And if it's a parent, God's through with you there. Get somewhere where you're not life support to the church, but where you can get on life support.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Because if you keep pressing on like you're going with your family and all shot up, hurt through the storm.
And sometimes you need to sit for a while.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you sat for
4 years.
4 years
Yes,
at one
sir.
time
under a godly pastor.
to get back
Yes, sir.
together where
Yes,
God
sir.
and God's used in a great way.
Yes, yes.
One of the worst things to do is to grab the bull by the horns again and jump right in the middle of the fire, another fire.
Yeah.
And so with these things that we've said to you today, you need to be very careful that you don't mess up and miss out on what God has for you.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
These men, they want you to know they love you,
Yes.
they care for you, and so do I. If there's anything we can do for you, please get in touch with us here at the Higher Grounds Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. And from the Higher Grounds Podcast, you, my friend, keep pressing on the upward way. We will see you next week.